Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So, today I'm going to be doing some more work on my coloring page in Fairy Tales Folklore by Emily Lydhall Oberg. And I'm going back to this page that I started that I worked on with the gelatos. So, I put a base down with the gelatos. And then I also did a little bit of shading with some Cezanne watercolor pencils that I have. I wanted to try out my watercolor pencils to see how well it went on top of the gelatos. And the Cezanne watercolor pencils are a little bit harder. They're very pigmented, but they're a little bit harder. But they get a little bit of shading on the mountains in the background, a little bit of shading on the trees, but it's barely noticeable. And I wanted a little bit more darker shadows. So instead of going to something else like acrylic paint pens right away, I decided I wanted to try using the watercolor pencils again, but this time I'm going to be using my Prismacolor watercolor pencils that I have because they're a little bit darker and more pigmented. I think they're easier, softer. They're a little bit softer than some other watercolor pencils. And so I'm going to try those out first. So I was pleasantly surprised to see, though, that the watercolor pencils do go on top of the gouache, and it doesn't mess up the gouache underneath. So it's very good to go over gouache with. So I'm going to start out with the dark green, and I'm going to put in some darker shading here with the Prismacolor watercolor pencils. I mean, I could leave it just as a pencil on there. You can use it that way, just as a pencil. But I like blending it out a little bit. There we go. Now my water brush, go in there, blend it out. Yeah, I think that works really well. So it's great that you can use. I wasn't sure what I could use on top of the gouache. I was worried that it was going to reactivate and move around, but it's not really doing that from my experience here with this page. It's the gouache is staying put, and I'm able to use these watercolor pencils right on top of it. It's great. I really want more deeper shadows for more of a contrast here to make it look more three-dimensional. And I also could just put a color pencil as well, just on top of the gouache. But I just felt like using more water-based mediums just to test out different things, see how they work together. And for a smoother, quicker application, more blended. Again, I'm just doing dark green all over on all the trees. I'm pressing down kind of hard because you got to press down a little hard on top of the gouache. If I didn't want to press down so hard, a little harder, uh, I could just take the color for the pencil right from the pencil with the water brush. If for some people, pressing down hard with the pencil might be a bit strenuous. That's the word. Maybe a bit of a strain. So I could just take the color off the tip of the pencil and just use that as well. The watercolor is very easy on the hands to use. Watercolor pencils, if you use it that way, just as a stick. I just like how I can blend it out and sort of get that mid-tone in there, as well as the undertone, the shadow. You probably have not having trouble seeing that, right? Keep getting my hand in the way of the camera. I'm trying to keep things visible to the camera here. Technical issues. And of course, there are other green, lighter green colors I can blend in with it, but I'm just gonna, because I already have a couple of greens in there, basically with the gelatos. I'm just using the one color for now, seeing how that turns out. The gelatos are great for putting in a nice base, nice lighter colored base, very smooth. And easy to add on top of with various tools, whether it's color pencil, watercolor pencil, acrylic, whatever tools you use, I think will pretty much go on top of the gouache. That's a very flexible medium, I guess would be the word. Very, but the gouache does not cover the black lines. Neither does the color pencils or the watercolor pencils. The only medium that I know of that will cover the black lines are the acrylic or gouache. Gouache may go on top of the black lines and cover them as well. So I think that's why. Usually wait to the end to use the acrylic unless you want to do. Some people have been using the acrylic pencils or markers as a base. You can, because acrylic is water based, you can put some acrylic marker in a on a plate or whatever, blanking on the word, but you can mix it with your water brush and get a lighter base with the acrylic markers as well. But it still looks a bit flat to me, like it doesn't give you a lot of gradients. It doesn't give you the light to dark look that gouache or watercolor pencils will give you, or pencils, color pencils. Like when you use the acrylic even as a base, it can make a nice base, nice bright thick base. But it does look, I mean, depending on the look you're going for, it seems to me you can go over acrylic with color pencil as well and kind of deepen it up and give it a 3D appearance with a highlight mid-tone and shadow. But I know it kind of looks cartoony, so, and not realistic, I guess. It's cartoony is the word I would use for it. Very thick. I like a little bit the transparency. I love the transparency of watercolor. I've always favored watercolor over acrylic for that reason. The transparency gives it a nice light, more of a, I don't know, ethereal look or more natural lighting look. This looks prettier to me. It's personal preference, of course. But I really like the gouache. The gouache is to me, very similar to watercolor, using watercolor. It's a bit thicker and it dries much faster. So it seems a bit easier to use. And it's because you use less water with the gouache, you don't warp the paper, especially, most of these coloring books are not made for watercolor. So if you use watercolor, the paper gets all warped, wrinkly. But the gouache doesn't do that. When you use gouache, you get that kind of watercolor look without damaging the paper as much as watercolor would, because you need more water for the watercolor. So I really do like using this gouache on coloring books. I think that it's easier on the paper, and it's easy to layer on top of as well with color pencil or watercolor pencil or acrylic or whatever. Seems like everything can go on top of gouache. It's really holding its ground there. Like the gouache is not lifting up, which is great. Now, if this was watercolor as a base, it would probably lift up. I don't know about the acrylic. If you use acrylic as a base, I haven't done that. Have you tried going over acrylic again? Because acrylic is water-based as well. I don't know. I think that might lift up again if you tried putting watercolor on pencils on top of acrylic. I have to try that and see, but I would imagine it would reactivate. But this the gouache is not really reactivating that I can see. It's holding its ground. It's staying where I put it, and I'm able to use the water brush and go right over that gouache, and it stays put, and I can move around this dark green watercolor around the gouache. So there you have it. So I've got more darker shading there. I got two more trees to do here. I'm gonna do this tree over here. So I'm just putting some scribbles in, not really being too exact because I just go in with the brush, soften it up, spread it around. And one last tree over here I'm going to do. I didn't go in with the acrylic right away because I felt the acrylic might be too dark. I didn't want the shadows to be, because the darker acrylic patterns are very vibrant, and I didn't want a dramatic shift in the tone from very light to very dark. I just wanted a more subtle shading here, or not too dark. Yeah, so that's what I wanted, a more subtle looking, natural looking shading. Now I've got the ultramarine blue pencil, darker blue here, and I'm going to go into the mountains in the background here. And shade the bottom with the blue. Very small area here, little areas. But I have a good point on this particular brush. There's a nice sharp point to it. I'll put a link below. These are the Pentel paint brushes that I have, water brushes. They give you different sizes. So normally I'd use just a regular big tip with a water brush, but this one has a nice little point to it to allow me to get into those little nooks and crannies there. Because it's a little tricky around these little pieces of clothing there. All right, so I'm just going to go around to all the mountains and add some ultramarine blue. This is a little more dramatic. This color, the shading coming out looks a little more darker there. I think it'll lighten up as it dries. Watercolor does get a little lighter as it dries. But if I wanted to make it a little more grayer looking, I can add some brown on top of it. Blue and brown will make a gray. And I can always do that later. I want to do one layer at a time. But if I wanted to, I could mix, the watercolors on a palette. That's the word I couldn't think of before. A palette. Just mix the blue with the brown beforehand to make a gray, and then go add it on if I wanted. But I'm just gonna try the ultramarine blue first, and then a little bit of the house there. There we go. Got it. It's easy to fix watercolor. Just go over it with the brush. Wet it down if you accidentally go over a line. So I do like how the dark blue came out, and I could leave it like that, but I think I am going to turn it more gray. So I pulled out my dark brown watercolor pencil. It's all dried now. So I'm going over the ultramarine blue with the dark brown to make it more of a dark gray color. So it's not so bright. I could use orange too, the complement of blue, to sort of tone it down as well. You don't want just quite so blue. It's a little darker there, a little more of a almost black looking now. That's okay. Bring some brown, dark brown over here to make it not quite so blue, because it is a mountain, not a waterway here. So I'm just gonna spread that out a bit, try to smooth it out. You could also lift it up a little bit so it's not quite so dark there. You can lift the color, wipe off the brush and lift it a little bit, lighten it up as well if it's too dark. I think it's too dark there, so I lifted it up a little bit, so just a little lighter. These pencils do get very dark, which is great. Yeah, so I think that's working for me. I'm going to do a little bit of dark brown up here as well. I think it is a little bit patchy. The watercolor pencil does come out a little patchy on top of the gouache. So I have to smooth it out, put a little more effort to smoothing it out. And now I'm going to use the dark brown on her hair and the shaded areas. I'm just going to go ahead and use the dark brown wherever I think the hair would be more shaded. And if I want to make the brown's not dark enough for me, then I can go in with a blue and make it even darker, like the ultramarine blue, to make it more of a gray. The tree is like in her hair here, it looks like. So I think the hair is going to be darker behind the tree. It's going to be darker under her ear. Again, you could use the watercolor pencil just as a color pencil, but I think it's I have more fun moving it around with the water brush. Make it look more painterly, like a painting. It just smooths it out. I think it looks better when you smooth it out. With the water brush. And fill it easy to fill in those all those white spaces very quickly. And her eyebrows are also dark brown. Shade those in a little bit as well. Now I'm going to use the olive green pencil for some shading. It might not be dark enough to make the shading dark enough, so I may go on top of it with another color, brown or something. But I'm going to start her skin. I made olive green color, so I'm just going to go in, start coloring that in, and see if this will work for shading around her face. Make it a little more three-dimensional. It doesn't look like she has a mouth. It looks like this is the chin here, I think. And of course, we have her fingers to do as well. Shade those in a little. Again, this is the olive green color. So let's see how this olive green works on the gelato green. Again, if I want to add a little more color, I have the pencil here. I can just take it right from the pencil and add it on if I want a little more color. Adding a subtle shading, which is nice. I may want to go a little darker later, or make it a little more dramatic, a little more contrast, but the neck area down here should be a little darker, maybe. But at the very least, this is a very nice mid-tone color. You see a little bit more three-dimensional. Yeah, I think it's showing up at least. It is showing up. You can see a little bit of shading there. So if I wanted to, I could go in with an even darker, maybe the dark green. Although the dark green, I think would be too green for this. The complement, I could use the red for a complement to the green. Make it a little darker too if I wanted. So I want to keep her, the olive green color. It's, different from the trees. I put a little in her ears as well. I think this should be shaded in. For the eyes, I'm going back to the ultramarine blue, and I'm going to make her eyes just ultramarine blue here. At least for the first shading. I'm getting the olive green. The olive green, I'm just going to shade it a little on both sides of the eyelids to make it look a little more three-dimensional there. Add a little more on the nose. Let's see if I can add another layer there. I think it's working pretty well. It's olive green. I'm going to start with the olive green. It's a little lighter. Okay. I'm going to go into the eyes. I may get a little olive green in there, but that's all right. You won't see it with this dark ultramarine blue. I want to make the windows bright. Did put over with a gelato a yellow color here. I'm going to go over it again with a yellow. This is sunburst yellow. And I want to make it red on the bottom. This is carmine red. Nice light red here. There's going to be a red, yellow, orangish look in the windows. I'm going to do that for all the windows here. Get a nice mix of these two. I'm also going to put some of the carmine red on her fingernails as well. So giving her reddish, orangey fingernails there. The great thing about watercolor pencils is you don't have to be neat about putting it down. Scribble it on there, and then move it around with the water brush and smooth it out later. So I get the color down there. And I may do the flag as well. I made the flag a yellowy color here, so I'm going to add some more sunburst yellow, and I'll put in a little red shading in there as well. Okay, now for the water brush. I'm going to start in the yellow and move into the carmine red. I missed a window here. I forgot this window. So many windows in this. Overlooked one. I think her hair needs some more color in it. It looks kind of blah right now. Though I like the shading came out. So now I'm going to use the terracotta. It's like a reddish brown. And I'm going to take that out from the dark brown that I put in and just sort of shade it like a mid-tone there. Give a little more of a reddish tone to her hair. Looks a little too faded out. Give it some color here. She's a dramatic character, you know, she needs some drama to her hair, so add a little drama. Terracotta here. Let's put it right on top of the dark brown as well. Blend them together. I got everything there. Okay. It looks a little better. Interesting. A little more here. There we go. I guess more of a. I'm going to take it right from the brush now. From the pencil, I mean. Over that a little bit more. I can go back over it with dark brown if I want to go make it more shaded. That looks better to me. And I'm going to do it on her eyebrows as well. Add some terracotta to her eyebrows. like most of these mediums that you water down with a water brush, whether it's gouache or watercolor pencils, you always have to putting a couple of layers down always brings it out much nicer. So now I want to put some shading on the houses. So I'm going to be back to the dark brown and using pencil, just going wherever I feel the shading should be under the roof and towards the bottom. That will contrast to the windows nicely, make it darker underneath. Give a nice shade on the bottom here. And I think I should do the trees too. So I do the top of the tree trunk and a little on the bottom of the tree trunk. I'm using dark brown for now. And I also have a dark umber in this set so that if it's not quite dark enough, I don't feel this dark brown is dark enough, I can go in with the dark umber, which is a more of a bluish brown, darker brown there. And if I want to make it even darker, I could use that. I want to see how this turns out first, see how dark, if I'm happy with the contrast or not. Let's start with a dark brown first. That might be enough for the shading. We'll see. Again, I could always add blue on top of the brown as well to make it more of a gray, dark gray color. Also, I want to make it darker. We'll see what happens with this dark brown on the houses. There, I think I covered them all. So let's go in with the water brush. I didn't finish the trees. I'll do the trees. I'll do that next. I'll finish the houses. I just stick to one thing at a time so I don't lose my place. I think that shading might be dark enough. I'm not sure. I should go a little darker or not. I want to shade the trees with the dark brown first. The tops and the bottom. I go in with the terracotta because I want to make a little design on the roof. Color some of them in. And she has yellow gold earrings. I'm going to put a little terracotta on the background to be the shaded area of the earrings. They look a little more three-dimensional. We have the carmine red again, and I'm going to make the little t-shirt red. And then I'll make pants a dark blue, ultramarine blue, a light shade of it. And the dress, I don't know what I'll do with the dress. But I'll go over that, just a little bit of extra light color there. Yeah. I've got my black pencil, and I'm just going to do the inside of her eye, her pupil there, and the white highlight. Very carefully activate that. I'll get it in the highlight. Of course, I can go over the highlight again with possibly acrylic pens later. Not the end of the world. I made it a little smaller there by accident. I can go over it again later. This black is very strong, so it covers everything. I don't think this faded out. I don't know if I forgot this part. It's not colored. Dark green here. Yeah, I forgot this one. Yeah, sometimes I accidentally skip it, or it just doesn't blend as thoroughly as I thought I did. Just going over this again a little bit, make sure it's after it dries, you can see whether it really blended in or not. So I'm going to kind of go over some areas here with my dark brown. I can color it in just a little bit more. I want a little more contrast there. Just touching up areas that don't look quite dark enough. I think I want to go any darker with this shading on the houses. I think I kind of like it a little bit less shaded, just a little bit more. The dark brown again. I'm just putting a second layer of the dark brown to really make it show. Kind of stop mid sentence there. If you use a little too much water on your brush, it can sort of brush away the color too much. I have to go over it a second time here. Make sure I get it down. Out of the terracotta, I'm going to do the chimneys here. Some dark brown under that. Use some terracotta on the door here. Give the door a red color, reddish brown. And a dark brown under the windows. I'm not liking how my mountains came out in the background. I put like an olive green color on there. Not really liking it, so I'm going over it all with the terracotta red, sort of tone that down. And go over that blue a little bit more. Give it more of a reddish purplish look at the end. See how that comes out. Sort of want to fade into the background a little bit, look more browner there. Yeah, it's a little better. It's a little browner. I thought I wanted it green on top, but I don't. I changed my mind. I'll just make it brown. Hills in the backgrounds here. I could go over it again with acrylic brushes, and I might still do that. Add another color on top. That's a great thing. You just keep changing the colors around with these different tools. So if you don't like one color, you just go over it later with another. Your acrylic paints or your watercolor pencils and just change it on the fly. Of course, you don't really want to do. You want to try to avoid doing that, but sometimes you can't help it, trying out different things. I'll learn as you go. Yeah. So again, putting terracotta on these hills over here. Make them all brown. And this one too. To the reddish brown of the terracotta will make the green. Really subdue it, kind of hide it, make it look more brown. That's what I'm going for. The red and green together will make a brown, which works for a hill or for hair or whatever. That'll work out just fine. Now, anyways, I'll see how I like it. Or don't like it in the end. I'll see what I think. That looks okay, I think. I'm also going to use a little terracotta on the rings down here, put gold rings on her. So I'll put that on the sides to shade it. Shade them. Make them look a little more three-dimensional. Okay, so I'm done now for part 2. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.